Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast. How y'all doing? Today is part 6.
And not able to essentially get it into remission.
Yeah.
But you can imagine, I mean, I was devastated.
Yeah.
I'm driving home from Nashville after work, and I'm like shaking, essentially getting ready to call Kaylee and say, hey, you know, good news is we found out what it is.
Bad news
is I got about 5 to 10 years left, right? So that call was extremely difficult.
So you did make the call.
I did make the call, and, you know, obviously got home and just a lot of confusion and shock and just, you know, where do we go from here? I mean, we went from, again, the highest of highs. You know, our marriage obviously struggled through all of that. You know, we got to a point where we were so deep in the business that it felt like we couldn't get out of it even if we wanted. We had individuals that had uprooted from other areas of Tennessee and moved there to work. I mean, we were responsible for other people's well-being, and that all got destroyed. And it was just a trying time, you know, on our marriage, on my health, on everything. And so
Kimber and Briggs were how old at this time?
Kimber at this point in 2018 was 3, and Briggs was just born.
Wow.
And he was still an infant.
So how did you feel at that point in time, as, you know, obviously with your background and everything, but, you know, like everything else you could almost, you know, in your mental capacity, like, man, I can overcome that. You know, whether I'm working all the time, whether I'm doing substance abuse, whether I can overcome it. And so you're like,
can't beat it.
Yeah. Like there's nothing I can do. So you as a husband, you as a father, like what went through your mind and mental capacity at that point in time?
So I've since realized that a lot of my anxiety, and due to earlier, you know, again, traumas and things like that, the culprit for the majority of my anxiety is control. When I can't control something is when I become uncontrollably anxious.
You related to my wife?
So we can get to that in a minute. Yeah. One day her and I are going to fist fight. I can guarantee you. Our anxieties are not going to allow us to not fist fight. But when I don't have control, and so I'm so glad that you bring that up, because that was a big realization for me, is like God forced me to realize that. Yeah. When he gave me something that for the first time I could not fix. Yeah. Like, this was just, hey, bud, it's out of your control. Yeah. Like it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't how much numbing of, you know, intrusive thoughts or whatever it might, like, this is it, dude. You cannot fix this. Yeah. Right. And like I said, that was for me, unfortunately, as devastating as that news was and is, even still today, because, I mean, I'm still affected severely by this disease. Few people know that I have it, and we can talk about that in a minute, but it was like, I'm going to plague you with this, essentially. Yeah. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. You can't get rid of it. There's nothing you can do about it, right? And it gave me really no option, but for the first time, to start to come back to, you know, the root, come back to my faith, and
to fully rely on him.
Yep. And again, I hate that it came to that.
Yeah.
It's such a weird place to be when you're almost thankful for what could be, and maybe one day will be, a terminal illness.
Yeah.
But it's something that helps me every day remember that I can't not have him. You know? Yeah. And I've since had this idea of, when I think about, you know, my liver disease, this idea of life in general, where, and I've compared it before when I've kind of told people the story, is like vacation, right? Like, if you plan a vacation and you embark on that vacation, like, never one for most people, unless you're a psychopath. At no point were you like uber stoked about the ride there. Like that's not what you like. That just happens to be a part of.
Yeah.
Right. And in order to get to the destination, there's a ride, whether that's a plane ride or that's a car ride or a walk or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But the focus is on the destination. And then when we go through this life and we become so obsessed, with the ride.
Yeah.
And we lose focus of where we're going and the destination. And so this disease is like a daily reminder of what this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
None of it.
I agree. What truly matters
is where we're going.
Yeah.
And again, I hate that my stubbornness forced me to, for him to put me in this situation. But I'm also extremely thankful most days, even though some days Kaylee would highly disagree that I'm not. I'm so thankful for this reminder.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give me an option to forget anymore. It doesn't give me an option to hide from it or distract myself from it. I live with it every day. And the biggest symptom is just exhaustion. Like if you look it up, it's essentially like even in when you've remediated or in remission,
yeah,
you just deal with chronic fatigue. And from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, it's just I'm tired. And I know everybody is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm more tired, but the disease just makes me exhausted. But it's in that exhaustion that, like I said, I'm able to remind myself of like, you have so much, and just to recenter and refocus on gratitude and grace and forgiveness. And again, I'm not great at it. This is a journey. I'm an infant.
But we're not meant to be. We're supposed to live that way, but no human being is able to fully, we're not perfect by any means.
100%.
And we can beat ourselves up every day, but you can strive for greatness and you can shoot for the stars. Yeah. But you fail. Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, these two sort of concepts, if you will, of like, I'm more focused today on the destination, and I try at least, even when things just become very burdensome and complicated or anxious or whatever, I find those times are much shorter. They haven't gone away.
Yeah.
But I'm able to dig out of them significantly quicker than I used to, because of this reminder of you're focusing on the ride.
Yeah.
It's not the ride we're focused on.
Yeah.
It's the destination at the end. It's the vacation that we're going to go on that's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And so it does help, and it has empowered me more than any success or amount of money or really anything. And so, it's been a huge blessing. And since then, actually, just a couple months ago, for the first time, I got a call from my doctor, and my blood work has been completely normal all year. And I'm not on any medication for the first time since I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And so
That's
as far
awesome.
as a treatment is concerned, we've found success, and it's in what we would consider remission.
Yeah.
My liver enzymes will still fluctuate from time to time. Like they'll still be off. I do have cirrhosis of the liver. I had that back as early as 2018. I've not had a biopsy since. We bypassed the option essentially to get a biopsy. I think it was last year, just under the understanding of like, hey, there's more. We know that. Anytime you have the inflammation, you've got scarring. And until I really start to have other physical problems, I have a MELD score, which is I think it stands for medical end-life liver disease score. And that's kind of how they measure you of where or when you will go on a transplant list. So at some point, likely, I will end up with a higher MELD score, and that will put me on a list. And then that score, as it intensifies or grows, will put me higher on that list. And so hopefully if we get to that point, I'm able to get that. And that doesn't, again, cure the disease. You'll still have it, but it will essentially, if you're able to accept the transplant, then you'll kind of reset the clock.
Yeah.
You get a new engine, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a constant reminder. And it's really been the only thing that has ever kept me grounded and focused on my faith, and just like I said, living with a heart of gratitude and just being thankful for even the bad days.
Oh yeah. Being there, being able to be present and be with your family. 100%. And I think that the heart of this story of what you just told kind of goes back to what I say, that, you know, when people hear about our story with our kids and what we've been through, they're like, well, God's not going to put more on you than what you can handle. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go a step further with that. God's going to put just a little bit more on you than what you can handle, so that you turn to Him.
100%.
That, you know, you're not like, I can handle it myself. I can take care of it. I don't need you, God. He's going to put more on you than you can handle. And He will test you
100%
at some point in time, and get your attention and make you turn to Him, because it's a last resort. I mean, that's the same way with our kids. I'm not going to say a last resort, but it's the only resort, because no way could me or my wife handle what we've been through with my kids. Just 100%. Just us trying to do it. We would have been in substance abuse. We would have been drowning in something, and probably not on this earth if we hadn't turned our lives to God and said, please help us, please take care of us, and fully, like you said, fully rely on God. I've got a friend that his nickname is Frog. Because
I know him. He goes to Grove.
And that's what he's got a bracelet, says fully rely on God. And man, that's I think there's no truer statement for this story than that right there.
Yeah. And coming back here during that time, you know, I ended up randomly on LinkedIn I had a recruiter reach out about circling actually back to the very beginning of K2, a web developer position at ORNL. So when I first got that diagnosis, I didn't quite have this realization, right?
Yeah.
Again, we were in a place where we had just now liquidated the business and paid off debts and things like that. And we ended up making out okay. My parents helped me with finalize some things. And this was right before COVID. And I got a message from a recruiter from ORNL on LinkedIn. They were looking for a WordPress web developer, and I had that skill and information kind of on my LinkedIn resume. It's tough to get in out there. Like, I never thought I'd end up out there. You know, growing up here, a lot of times that's a dream job. You know, it was not even on my radar. And I got a call. I interviewed. It was like bam, bam. I mean, I don't even think it was a week.
Wow.
That they called and offered me a job.
Yeah.
I think maybe a day or two before I got the offer from that job, randomly, not on Kaylee's radar. My Aunt Debbie, who was friends with Pam May, Pam and her had been talking, and Pam needed a director of marketing at the Rhone Alliance. And my Aunt Debbie was like, my nephew's wife does that because of K2 and everything. She had started working a little bit for K2 when it really grew. And same thing happened. Bam, bam. Called her up. And it was like, I think the next day after having a conversation with her, Pam called her back.
Wow.
It was like, hey, we'd like to make you an offer on a job. So we were moving back to Roane County was not on our radar. In fact, moving back to Roane County was something that we didn't want to do. We said when we left, like, we'll never go back.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
And so I got the diagnosis. It was like maybe 2 weeks later, I got the message on LinkedIn. And then within that same week, or maybe the following week, Kaylee got an offer to come back as well.
Wow.
So it was like, well, I guess we're going back to Roane County.
Yeah.
And this was at the very, this was actually, 2019 at this point. So right before COVID happened. And so we're like, okay, my Aunt Debbie being a realtor, we're like, we need to list her house. She listed our house. So we had like 8 offers or something like that.
Wow.
We listed it like 8 a.m, and by 5 p.m. we had it under contract. We put like a 30-day turnaround on it.
Wow.
And started packing up stuff and had nowhere to go back here. And we took those jobs. We packed up everything in the U-Haul and we moved back, and we moved in with my parents. The same time, 2 doors down, my mamaw, she'd falling on bad health, and she'd actually moved in with my Aunt Debbie and Uncle Artie. And so we ended up buying her house. We renovated it, and then we lived there for a year. During that time, I don't know why, but I had texted Chase Clem and asked him where he went to church. And he told me that he went to the Grove. And I don't even recall. We were still kind of in his mindset of like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That's not what we're going to be.
Yeah.
And we showed up one morning, and for years after, I don't think we missed a service.
Wow.
And we found that community, and Tyler and Philip and JT and a gentleman named Grant who's now back in Athens, and Chase, and just a bunch of people I grew up with, and Riley, and just felt like home again. Like that church has been so much to us and to our walk. And Philip has been just, I don't talk to him a lot, but just it's been such a light in our life. Like the whole church in general has been just an unbelievable blessing. And like I said, it was all purposed. And you look back at that and think like you can't draw that up if you wanted to.
No, exactly.
I could have went after Jabado or now and probably never gotten it. Kaylee could have looked forever here and not landed what she's landed. And so many of those things have led to where we're at career-wise now, and really just been able to rebuild, saying that we would never do the business again. You look back at it hindsight and you're like, hey, yeah, that was a traumatic experience. But at the end of the day, as we've now started back, we know what that looks like. We know the cheat code. We learned so much through that of what to do and what not to do, that we've been able to find success again in that. And so it's just like, you can't go back now and deny that every single one of those things, we're just leading to and equipping us to be, where we're at today. And, and like I said, do not get me wrong. It's so much growth that still needs to happen, but we just feel unbelievably and undeniably blessed by everything that took place and everything that led to, where we're at today, and meeting people like you and getting to work with the foundation. And just, we have such a give back mentality now, because we just focus so much, on trying to be selfless, and just, it's so rewarding now to be blessed with these talents and these gifts, really, and be able to contribute.
But isn't it so crazy, hindsight?
Yeah.
That you think that this is the worst of the worst, and yes, it was. I mean, I'm not going to downplay that by any means, but to see God was building you for something. And I think back on the stupid stuff that I've done, and I worry and pray that Lincoln and Kennedy don't do any of that stuff. But,
or no.
But, even though it was the dumbest stuff I've ever done in my life, and I made plenty of mistakes, that's the only way I learn. You can tell me not to do it. I've got to make the mistake to learn it myself. Yeah. But, not to go on a long tangent, but all that stuff was building me to where, to where we are today.
Yeah. It's just so hard to see that in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So going back to your question about what would you tell people?
Thank you for coming to watch part 6, and come tomorrow to watch part 7. Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.